Whoa, good morning, good morning. It is Sunday morning, and we are here for Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit with your host, Dr. Carol Penn. And I am so excited to welcome our audience to this Sunday show. We have two really, really dynamic and special guests, two of my super friends. You're going to meet them in a moment. We have Molly V. Walker and we have Dr. Mia Cowan. And I am so excited to welcome them because today we're going to be talking about cycles of desire. And already we have a guest popping on. Welcome, Victoria. Welcome, Dr. Onika. Welcome, Marianne. You will see we have a lively and engaged audience. We'll be, if they behave the way they usually behave, we'll be answering questions in real time on here. And that's always really exciting for me, and those dynamics that we can see real time. So as my grandmother would say, the early bird catches the worm. And we definitely have some early birds here. So what is weightless in mind, body, and spirit? So I mean it in two ways. I mean it literally to be weightless, to lose the weight, to shed the pounds. I am an obesity medicine specialist, but I also mean it emotionally and spiritually. What are you weighed down by? And what does it feel like when you free yourselves of those weight? But I digress. I'm Dr. Carol Penn, doubly board certified in family medicine and obesity medicine, and I am your master movement meditation and mindset coach, two-time best-selling author, and my book baby, Meditation in a Time of Madness, was written for a time such as this, as we are in now. So let me go ahead and introduce. Good morning, Patricia, and welcome. Let me go ahead and good morning, Linda, and welcome. See, we're gathering. We're waking up, ladies. We're waking up. Here we go. We're waking up. I'm going to go ahead and introduce both of my guests in the order in which they'll be speaking. So first, we're going to hear from Molly V. Walker, and then we'll hear from Dr. Mia Cowan. But first, Molly. Molly is a certified nurse midwife, master's prepared, and she received her Bachelor of Science from Vanderbilt University in 19, what did you do? Go to school when you were two, Molly?
Yeah,
1982, and her MSN in midwifery from the University of Pennsylvania in 1987. She's licensed in the state of New Jersey with prescriptive privileges. She received her certificate as a sexual assault nurse examiner, SANE, SANE, from Rutgers University in 2002. And so she is board certified in midwifery by the American Midwifery Certification Board. And she has worked in all areas of midwifery and women's health, from hospitals to birth center to home births and at Planned Parenthood.
wow.
Yes, yes. I mean, she's, again, had a broad spectrum career, and it's been fantastic. She's worked as a SANE forensic nurse for Monmouth and Mercer counties for 11 years. Very, very important role. And Molly, we'll let you talk more about those experiences, as well as talk to us a little bit about what midwifery is. Not everybody knows, all the names and the differences and whatnot. So from 2010 to 2017, she co-facilitated Centering Pregnancy Group at the Family Health Center for Jersey Shore University Medical Center. She's been a preceptor for midwiferys and nurse practitioners and SANE students. And she has just been working in the field of women's health, being a leader there, making it dynamic. This is how I know Dr. Molly. She is Dr. Molly.
What everybody calls me.
Her midwifery experiences are concerned, and her leadership. That's how I know her. I know her through her leadership in the midwifery community. We were working at the same hospital. I also worked at Jersey Shore as a childbirth educator and a doula before I went to medical school. And we are also part of the same community of faith. So it's very exciting to welcome Dr. Molly. And now, to welcome Dr. Mia. You all got to check this out. Good morning, Kieran. Kieran is here. She's on from Pakistan. It's very late at night over there. So this truly is, we've got, an international audience. So Dr. Mia Cowan is founder and medical director of Me Bella Wellness Center. She's a native of Birmingham, Alabama. Dr. Cowan received both her Bachelor of Science degree in biology and a Master of Arts degree in health education and promotion from the University of Alabama. She completed her Doctorate of Medicine and residency training in obstetrics and gynecology from the Medical College of Wisconsin. Oh, you went from hot to cold.
I had to go find my husband.
All right, there you go. There you go. During residency, Dr. Cowan received several awards and was appointed chief resident of the OB-GYN residency program from 2005 to 2006. Oh, girl, I was chief resident. Woo! Oh, yes. Can anybody say the schedule? Dr. Cowan is a fellow of the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She received her training as a bariatric medicine specialist from the Center for Medical Weight Loss and has a Master of Business Administration degree from Auburn University. Can anybody say the bariatricians are in the house? Are in the house? Yes. Dr. Cowan served on the YMCA Shades Valley Board of Directors from 2010 to 2017. Thank you for your service. That was a long run. And chaired the Strong Kids campaign in 2011 to 2012. She also served on the Safe House Board of Directors from 2013 to 2016. She has been a member of the American Heart Association Birmingham Multicultural Leadership Committee since 2012. She was a member of the executive board for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society from 2014 to 2016. She has proudly served on the American Heart Association board since 2015. Just like my mama. My mama's been involved a lot with the cardiology boards. She's a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Birmingham chapter of the Links Incorporated, the Women's Network, Jack and Jill of America, and the Mineral District Medical Society. She also leads a couple small group with her husband that she found in Wisconsin in the cold weather at her church, Living Stones Temple. She is married to Joseph Brown Jr. and has a daughter, Marley, and a son, Jamel. She enjoys spending time with her family, golfing and traveling, and I met her through the Medical Moguls Academy, where our business coach, Dr. Dre Burt. So yes. Hashtag Medical Moguls in the house. So, and good morning, DM, to my beloved. Yes. So he's saying bravo to you leaders, healers, and all. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And our show today is called Cycles of Desire. We're going to start with the mystery for some of the female monthly cycle or the menstrual cycle and correlate that with those cycles of desire when we're in those years. But then we need to fast forward because I hear a lot of perimenopausal, menopausal women feeling as if their libido has just vanished and not knowing really how to drop back into their cycles of desire. And I think human sexuality is so important, basic, fundamental. We need it throughout our entire life. Our entire life. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Molly. And Molly, would you please walk us through that part of our life cycle? What is that? What is that about? That seems to be a mystery to a lot of people.
The menstrual cycle?
Yes.
So many of my patients don't really understand the menstrual cycle, and I'm an expert in birth control. I worked at a clinic for the last 16 years doing women's health care, which is anywhere from all the prenatal care and pre-pregnancy help to birth control and sexually transmitted disease and annoying vaginal infection problems and painful menses and helping manage those sorts of things. I just didn't do surgery. That was the difference between me and the obstetrician gynecologist. I do all the annual exams, mammograms, pap smears, all that testing. But many of my patients didn't understand. They would say, well, I get my period, but it's not on the same day every month, or I always get my period on the 15th. So I would explain how most of us have a 28-day cycle, or approximately, not really, but you can say that. And then we're on various times. People say, oh, it's irregular because I don't get it on the same day of the month. Then I explain that the calendar was invented by men. It was not invented by women, or the calendar we use. And if it was invented by women, we would have 13 months of 28 days. Whereas the calendar that we use is invented by men, so there's these 30-day cycles. So if you do get your period on the 15th or the 10th of every month, then you have a 31-day cycle. And then I show them how we count from the first day of the cycle to the first day of the next cycle. And so I'm also explaining this when people are like, how do you come up with my due date? And why are you asking me about my period when when obviously I didn't have sex until 2 weeks later, or something like that. So then I go through the calendar, and I'll start with January 1, and I'll count down 4 weeks, and I'll count down 4 weeks, and I'll count down 4 weeks. And so if you take an average 28-day cycle, your period every fiscal quarter moves up a week. So instead of coming on the 4th week of the month, in the second fiscal quarter, it'll be in the 3rd week of the month. And it will revolve till you get your period, back comes December 31st. You're back to the first day of your period. I had a 6-day cycle, so I would count down 4 weeks and then subtract 2 days. Then count down 4 weeks and then subtract 2 days. And so that's how I was able to keep hold of mine. Now, a lot of people have what I call very loud cycles. They have a lot of emotional and physical changes, so they could really know what's going on with their cycle. And in the cycle of desire, I go back to what my dad used to call the days of Og and Mog. Back in our primitive selves, our main purpose is to reproduce. So the reason why we have a period is because we're getting ready to get an egg, an fertilized egg, and have it implanted in the uterus. So we have our period, and then some of us are lucky. Hold on a second. The sun has appeared, and it's in my eyes. We're supposed to stay cloudy for a little while. So we start with our period, and it lasts for, if you're really lucky, 3 days, and if you're unlucky, 7 days. And then when you're done with your period, you'll notice that as the blood thins out, that you get a clear mucousy discharge, and then that seems to increase and increase. And then about day 14 of your cycle, again on this 28-day cycle, you may have a lot of mucus, and it may, you may notice that when you're on the toilet, that it may hang down all the way to the toilet water. And then after that, you may have some cramping that day, and then you may have really not very much mucus for another 2 weeks until a day or two before your period. And then day before or two before your period, you may all of a sudden have an increase in discharge. You think, oh, my period's coming. You feel that moisture coming down, and you're like, oh, my period's coming in. It'll be really white, perhaps the day before your period, and then your period comes back. During that time, you also may notice that when your period starts, you may be a little grumpy and crampy and not feeling great. But then after that happens, you may feel, oh, gee, it would be nice where is that partner of mine? Where is that mate? And be really interested in sex. And that may build up till that day of your ovulation, day 14, where you're really interested in sex. So what's going on is you've got that mucus increasing, because the idea in life is to reproduce. All living beings reproduce. That is our purpose. That's what we're supposed to do. So so your body is there making things interesting for you to reproduce. So you keep on building up, and you're like more and more desirous perhaps of having sex. And then when you ovulate, you are like, could be a crazy day, and you really feel like, oh, anybody will do. I'll just have anybody will do, and hopefully you have a regular partner around. And then after you ovulate, you're like, okay, so you have to go on a business trip this week? Fine, see ya. And you're not so desirous anymore. So what's really going on there? So you have the buildup of the uterine lining. You have your period, and then your uterine lining starts building up again, ready to create an egg. Your egg is maturing, and it bursts out at 14 days. The key is actually with your period is that you always have your period 14 days after you ovulate. So I would ovulate on day 12, and I would get my period really 2 weeks later. So I knew I was going to get my period because I felt that cramping with ovulation. So the egg pops out, and so you want to make sure you have enough sperm there. The egg lasts for about 24 hours. The sperm lasts for 3 to 5 days. So you want to make sure you have enough sperm there to fertilize the egg. So you may, in the primitive sense or the lizard brain, you may have a lot of sex so that you have some sperm waiting there for an egg. And then once that happens, you're like, okay, we've done our job. We have the egg, we have have it going over here. So let's not create any other trauma or risk of infection or anything. So then you're not interested in sex anymore because you've already planted your egg and you're waiting for that to implant into the uterus and perhaps create a pregnancy. So for the next 2 weeks, you may not be interested in sex at all, and you're able to go along. The cycle of hormones is that you have your estrogen is high, and then it peaks on the day of ovulation along with follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, and those really peak on the day of ovulation. And then those drop off a little bit, and progesterone ramps up, and then is really high for the rest of the cycle. Then then when an egg doesn't implant, and by day 26 your body's like, oh, there's no implantation, then the progesterone drops off. The estrogen has actually been hanging out up there pretty high, but the progesterone's been above it, creating a buffer. And progesterone is a buffering hormone. It's softer, and it's a smooth muscle relaxer. It sort of keeps things slow. In case there is a pregnancy, it prevents the uterus from rejecting the fertilized egg. So it's up there, buffering. I got to get my angle right in the camera. Buffering. And then when it drops off, the estrogen is still there. And estrogen is a hormone of passion. And so you feel really passionate when you're ovulating, and you're really ready for a lot of sex. And then, but then the 2 days before your period, you have that progesterone, but maybe that luteinizing and follicular stimulating hormone also sort of creates a softness in the passion, in a different, tastes a little different. But when it drops off just before your period, that's a time when you might feel a little irritable, because it is a hormone of passion, a little irritable or very weepy. And that's that PMS that some of us get emotionally. And then, but you can also tell that your period's coming on. And you may have breast tenderness. The progesterone creates that breast tenderness 2 weeks before your period. So that's kind of how the cycle of desire happens.
I love it. And I love being reminded of that. We are so miraculously and wondrously made. So thank you for me, for, just reminding, we hear so many women complain about their menstrual cycle, and they're all into, pain and discomfort of it versus the celebration of it. There was a wonderful book out a few years ago called The Red Tent.
Right.
And that was, really talked about how the women in these tribal communities, which is wisdom tradition the world over, would come together during, and they would all have their cycles approximately at the same time. And there was a famous study, Tend and Be Friends, about oxytocin. Fast forward, I believe that study came out in the 1980s. That talked of, women in a college dorm or women in the same office, and we all begin to cycle together. And that's the phenomenon of the pheromones. And, going back to the day, I actually choreographed a piece based on the Red Tent, that's where, again, the midwives of the community they'd also catch those babies. So the babies were born approximately at the same time. The breastfeeding pairs would initiate, and oftentimes these were nomadic or traveling communities. And this allowed kind of a more organized way of being able to, make sure humanity was going on, get the business done, and then be able to move the herds instead of this one, that one, and the other one. And this is when we live together in these groups. So I just thank you for that. And it just brought me back to such, women's history. And I know both of you are very, very interested in the whole concept of, suppression of sexuality and how it correlates to oppression in life. And I'd like to welcome Rebecca to the show this morning. Thank you for tuning in. She's a first-time viewer. So, all right. Dr. Mia. So that was a beautiful correlation. And see, this is, I remember those days when, oh my goodness, and that whole cycle and, the mention, oh, baby, come here type of thing. But, what happens with perimenopause and menopause in the maturing woman?
So the first hormone that we all forget about that women actually have a bit of when we're young and not on birth control, and it starts to decline, is testosterone. So I call testosterone the forgotten female hormone because everybody forgets that we have a little bit of it, probably up to 70 to 100 if it's a younger woman who's not on birth control. And then as we start to age and mature, a woman who's not on birth control, it will start to slowly dwindle down to their late 30s, 40s. It's down to like 10 to 20 to 30. And that doesn't sound like a big decline, but when your testosterone is declining, the symptoms that a lot of women will start to notice is that they have problems with sleep. They're having some night sweats. They have some decreased libido, decreased enjoyment of intercourse. So fewer orgasms, they're more tired, they become a little bit more moody, a little more irritable. If they already suffer from anxiety and depression, that may worsen during this time. They may notice that they can't focus and remember quite as much. And then they start to notice the joint pain. And they start to notice too that they're gaining weight in their bellies. And they used to not gain weight in their bellies, but it all goes to the bellies. And that's because with testosterone, it helps to maintain that muscle. And once your muscle starts to decline with the decline in testosterone, that's when you get that fat going straight to the belly. So I call it the forgotten female hormone and the anti-aging hormone, because all of those symptoms that I just talked about correlate with an aging woman. So to decrease that aging process, the replacement of testosterone helps significantly, especially when you're starting to have symptoms that affect your quality of life. Now, a woman like me who's done birth control, pretty much her whole life, except for when I wanted to get pregnant at one time, my testosterone has been suppressed for a very long time. And that's what we forget about. We get these women who come in and they're complaining of their libido, but when you take birth control, like even just progesterone, if you're taking like combination birth control with the pill, the patch, or the NuvaRing, that's going to suppress your estrogen because it does suppress that FSH and LH that Dr. Molly was talking about. And so when that happens, you're going to have changes in the vaginal tissue with a little bit more dryness. So women start to notice with birth control that they feel like they're going through that aging process a little bit sooner just because of the suppression of all of your hormones, including the testosterone. But a woman who's not on birth control, that slowly starts to decrease. And a lot of those symptoms are very gradual. And then you look up one day and you're like, why am I so miserable? You go have your hormones checked and you realize that I'm not in menopause. My FSH is still low. I'm still producing estrogen, but they notice that the testosterone has declined significantly, and replacing the testosterone will help to improve that desire again, that enjoyment again. And the other hormone that, even though it's not decreasing significantly systemically, in that vaginal tissue, estrogen starts to decline. especially with birth control, it suppresses it in the vaginal tissue. And that's when women can start to notice that vaginal dryness, which can cause the discomfort during intercourse, which can also decrease the desire, because when your estrogen levels are lower, the vaginal tissue starts to thin and you notice the dryness. You can start noticing changes in your urination, like you're going more frequently. You may leak a little urine when you're coughing and sneezing. And all of those are signs that you definitely should be treating that vaginal tissue. And we should not wait to treat that vaginal tissue in menopause. I recommend my ladies do it before menopause. I either do it with a low dose estrogen that just works directly on that vaginal tissue. And I recommend that twice a week when you first start noticing any signs of dryness or changes in your urination. And then we have another product that I really like. It has hyaluronic acid. And so my women who want to avoid hormones for whatever reason, or they don't want to start the estrogen at that point, they can use the hyaluronic acid twice a week. And those two products are going to significantly decrease the aging process of the vaginal tissue. So I remind women that just like we have to focus on our skin and we use all these new products to try to maintain the collagen in our skin, we must do the same thing for our vaginal tissue so that we can enjoy intimacy forever. And with the changes in the hormones and the thinning of the tissue, it can decrease the sensation of that vaginal tissue and that G-spot, which could definitely affect the enjoyment of intimacy. So treating that tissue early, monitoring those hormones, replacing testosterone, or using supplements that help to replace the testosterone and improve it. Ladies who work out a little bit more are going to maintain that testosterone a little bit longer, maintain that muscle. So just the normal aging process is going to decrease the testosterone, which to me is the true female sexual hormone. And by replacing it, I can make sure that my ladies continue to enjoy intimacy forever, because it's so important not only for your relationships and your quality of life, but also your total wellness. Women who continue to participate in intimacy a couple times a week decrease their risk of heart disease, and they usually live about 5 years longer than women who completely stop intimacy, which was not God's intent.
Oh, thank you. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It is not God's intent. And I love that. So, I hope our listening audience is just taking all this in, how this is a health issue. It's a longevity issue. So you're talking about cardiovascular disease. You're talking about exercise and exercise tolerance. And you're talking about that's huge. 5 years difference in lifespan for those who just, stop intimacy. Where's my husband?
Right. Your husband.
Yes. So, real, and I love it. I think lifelong intimacy, and there's intimacy and there's sexuality, but some people seem to also just stop. They cut off the intimacy as well. So there's no hand holding. There's no, kissing. There's no, the warm hugs. Thank God you can hug a partner if you're living under the same roof, because COVID-19 has come in and impacted all of this, hasn't it?
It has. It really has.
So, this is huge. So, and I invite, so to our listeners, don't be shy. Go ahead and drop your questions about intimacy, about desire in the chat. You can make it completely anonymous. A friend of mine told me, now wink, wink, you might be talking about yourself, but that's okay. That's okay. So Patricia is saying, so happy the hot flashes and night sweats are over. My glasses would fog up and I'd have to change my PJs. Yes. And Rebecca's saying, excellent information. I just think, again, and the other issue I'd like to address is, what about sexuality and intimacy? And even one of you can answer this, for people who don't have a partner.
I think intimacy remains important. And I think that you can have intimacy with a partner or without a partner. So God gave us these wonderful gifts. He gave us the clitoris, which can be stimulated externally. He gave us all of these different spots inside our vaginal canals that can create huge and great sensation. I have studied it over and over because I'm in the South. So, we're in the Bible Belt. I'm gonna definitely put that with quotation marks with all the stuff that goes on around here. But because of that, I feel like women were taught to suppress their sexuality because it's so much easier to oppress a gender if you suppress their sexuality. And God did not make man more sexual than he made women. But by culture and by environment and the way you're raised, we're taught that. And we're taught that at a very early age. And I've even had some of my patients to come to me and say that their doctors explain to them that aging is a normal process and that you do lose the desire, but that's okay. Just lay there. They actually tell their patients that.
Oh
but God. That's not what I believe. I believe with hormonal balance, and I believe with some mindset and some meditation. I believe in your relationship, making sure you're communicating and making sure that you make that a priority because it's so necessary for you personally as well as in your relationship. And if you're not in a relationship, you get endorphins from orgasms and sexual activity that you don't get from anywhere else. So people who are having regular orgasms are going to have the good endorphins that help with mood, they help with energy, they help with focus, and you feel so much better. So my philosophy is if we allowed the world to have more orgasms, it would be a nicer, healthier, and happier place.
Absolutely.
With a partner and without a partner, and it's all kinds of intimacy. It doesn't have to just be physical touch. It could be recreational intimacy. It could be spiritual intimacy, and all of those other intimacies are going to play into that physical intimacy. For a lot of women, they need that emotional intimacy and that emotional connection when they're with another partner. But if you don't have a partner, you can still enjoy the gift from God because he made our bodies that way. And I just don't think he would tempt us, and we're not supposed to be able to please ourselves. Men were never taught that it was wrong for them to touch themselves. Women were taught at an early age. You just kind of knew it was a no-no depending on what kind of household you were raised in. But there's nothing in the Bible. I've researched it. I've asked several ministers for all my Southern belles who are concerned about it. And I have had patients to come and they feel so bad about the desire to please themselves. And I remind them that God just wouldn't tempt us that way. He gave us this body set up just like this, and it is okay to enjoy your own body and pleasure yourself. And that is the safer way, especially if you don't have a partner.
Oh my goodness, Molly.
And the cycle of the menstrual cycle makes it so you want to have sex, and you are a sexual being, and you should be having sex. And if you want to have sex, go ahead. I tell my teenagers, it's like, well, it's normal for you to want to have sex. You just have to protect yourself. Don't wait for the guy to bring a condom. You're going to put the condom on because he's not going to do it. If you want to have sex, go ahead, but you have to be responsible about it because of the social impacts. But you are a sexual being, and go right ahead. There's no reason why you're any less sexual than any guys are. So.
Well, first the comment, then I want to share a little story. Dr. Mia Cowan is so accurate about oppression through sexuality societally. As a therapist, I have heard so many women not have much accurate information about sexuality and intimacy. So true. So it's a funny story. My parents were very, very, very conservative. My father told me I couldn't date till I was 35. Yeah, I am my papa's only daughter. He has a son and a daughter, but I'm told I can't date till I'm 30. I don't remember any such conversation toward my brother. But when I was 16, my mom, I'll never forget, my mom was in the kitchen, and my dad and I were seated at the dining room table, and my father leans over to me and he says, "You know what? I think it's time for you to have some birth control. Let's talk about birth control." He says, "You're a teenage young woman. You're beautiful. And I understand that you may feel like you need sex as much as you need to take your next breath." Whereupon my mother dropped the pot that she was, it's like, "Dog, don't say that. What are you doing?" But it was, on the one hand, it was this man that said, "Well, we're not going to worry about it because I'm not going to let you at the house till you're 35. But also the very real recognition. It was like the first time my father looked at me and saw a woman. And it was such a special moment and a tender moment. And it was interesting at the time. I really wasn't interested. I had noticed the awakening of desire in myself. I would say from about 2 years prior to that, more like 14. But I was in a dance company. I was on a rifle team. I was on an equestrian. I was really busy. I was on all the, so involved. Uh, but but I appreciated my father for saying that, and it was so beautiful to have my father see me as a woman. And when I think back of it, that's what that moment was when the two of us were, sitting at the dining table, and I went on to, you know, all of those awakenings. That was not my moment. My mother was, very grateful for that. Um, but it's a special opportunity in a young woman's life, and we it's like parents out there, moms out there, dads out there watching. Your kids are sexual beings. Your kids are sexual beings. I remember with my own son when he was very young, and he had a little buddy sitting, and they were sitting in the back seat of the car, and I could overhear him talking, and so Jeff says to Keita, "Do you know what sex is?" And I'm like, "Oh, they're like, 8 years old." And I know, I don't know, my son had, done a little masturbation as little boys do, right? And,
Girls, they just have to
And
hide.
little girls.
girls too, both little boys and little girls. Little boys, like sometimes a little bit more obvious what's what's going on. But and I was like, okay, let me just drive the car. And so I said to him, and I was just listening, and then I said, well, let me not panic about this. And I was like, yes, Keita, do you know what sex is? So Keita, that's my son. And he said, yes, mommy, I know exactly what sex is. I said, would you mind telling mommy what sex is? He says, yes, it's when a man and a woman they take off their shirts and then they go like this. And he moves his shoulders up and down. And I said, okay, yes, that's exactly what it is. So again, realizing that, here's these two little boys had gotten curious, seeing different things on television, and they were 7 or 8. And I said, well, I'm going to let it rest at that, at this point, so again, that was just me checking in to see what their understanding was at the time. But I would like both of you to talk a little bit more about this issue of suppression of sexuality. Molly, perhaps some of the ways you've seen it in your work as a health educator.
Well, I had been talking to you earlier. As a sexual assault nurse examiner, I deal with a lot of survivors of sexual assault, and I always try to make sure I speak to my patients and ask them if they've ever had anybody force them to have sex or anything, especially if I start to examine them and they're like really don't want to be touched at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sort of freaking out if I'm doing a pelvic exam. I try to say that before I get to there, make sure I do that. But a lot of times people don't want to admit it. Then you're in an exam, you're like, wow, you're really acting very scared, and this is very traumatizing to you, what's going on. So, they were violated. They had something done to them that they didn't trust. So then all of a sudden, as we mature and we get these loud cycles, I say some people have really loud cycles of the sexual cycle that I explained that hits you upside the head. How could you miss it? And then other women just don't have it at all. And we all have such varying soups of hormonal mixture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very confusing, especially if you're a survivor of sexual assault. Here you were violated, and now you're feeling sexual. And what do you do with that? And is that okay? Is it because you were initiated into sex earlier than you had planned, or without your permission? So now that's making you run rampant. Many survivors end up being somewhat promiscuous.
Mm-hmm.
Risk takers, we see it more as a problem of not liking themselves enough to take care of themselves, and so they're taking a lot of risk, and also trying to um, perhaps gain attention and gain love and approval, because they held this big secret and they wanted approval. It's all very confusing. So I think that's one of the things that I try to impart on my patients. Also, whether or not birth control is going to create these different changes. So this is how the cycle goes. Birth control works to inhibit some of that. So some people with their birth control don't like it because it just like puts a kibosh on any kind of libido they have. So then we can try to tweak that and give them different kinds. Depends on what your birth control is for. If you have terrible periods or endometriosis and you need to suppress the bleeding, we're going to give you progesterones, and a lot of them will put the kibosh on any libido, especially the injection. But it's a kind of a no-brainer birth control. All you have to do is get yourself in every 3 months to get a shot, but it takes a while to recover from that, and there's a lot of weight gain and stuff, which I really don't like. The IUDs are a little bit better for that, and they have a different progesterone, a cousin, and it's not as bad in the libido department. If you're a really busy person, that might be helpful because you can't be worrying about, when am I going to have sex? Because you're too busy to have sex or to create a relationship. So that could, dampening of that sexual desire may be okay. So also I talk about sex toys. If you don't have a partner, you can have sex toys. And for my lesbian patients, they're using sex toys in part of their sexual play. And they have to make sure that they use, if they're sharing either have their own individual's toys, or if they're sharing a toy, they need to use a condom on it to protect themselves from infection.
Beautiful. Thank you. My grandmother used to say, so at family, when we're celebrating someone getting married and we're having, like the wedding shower as well as the baby shower, a gift that my grandmother used to give would be a little dildo in a velvet pouch. It was other grandmother. So shocked, it's like, the family matriarch. But she would say, if you don't know how to pleasure yourself, how can you expect anybody else to know how to pleasure you? And this was from a Southern Baptist woman who also understood that this sex and sexuality was a gift from God.
Yes.
And that I was raised with that as the thought, as the mentality, that this couldn't be more Christian.
Yeah.
More holy. This couldn't be more spiritual. And people would, crack up when she would say that or present this, when she said, and always, keep it clean and keep it beautifully packaged. And that was the little, the dildo in the little velvet pouch. And that would be her gift to young women in our family as they were getting married.
That trumps my Kama Sutra. I gave my niece the Kama Sutra when she got married. One of the other things that we do, Carol, in our faith community is that we have a sexuality class that we teach, that we run a year-long course for our middle school kids. And that was developed in the 70s, that course, and it's been running ever since. And it teaches in our Sunday school, the middle school kids get Sunday school of sexuality. So it really talks about sexual identity, our sexual beings, and our sexual beings are spiritual beings. Are a big part of everybody's spirituality is their sexuality. So we thought we should teach them the right information from the get-go. And now they developed the program so it has age-appropriate sexuality education for little kids and older elementary school kids, then this middle school age, a high school program, and where they're finally coming out with a curriculum for adults, because many of these adults did not get any kind of sexual, so we don't understand stuff. But under gender identity and then we go over the plumbing and birth control and how sex works and stuff, kind of at the end. But that's not. We try to emphasize to the parents that that's not what it's about. It's about knowing your own sexuality and being comfortable in your own skin. So.
Wonderful. We do have two questions that I'd like to turn over to you ladies. So from Patricia, are there supplements or foods that can help with vaginal health or desire? Ones that increase our hormones. Dr. Mia?
There are a couple supplements, and it's a really long word, but if you go to mebellawellness.com, it's called T-Support on my account, but it's actually a plant that was made in, I think it's Malaysia, and it helps to naturally increase the testosterone levels for women. So for my younger women or women who are on birth control and they don't have a lot of symptoms of low testosterone, it's mostly a sexual thing. And there's another plant called Damiana, and that's a natural way to kind of increase the desire for intercourse. Another way is making sure that you're, communicating, focusing on that relationship, the mindset, and then learning about your body, reading books like The Gift of Sex is one of my favorite books. It brings it from a kind of a spiritual perspective and what it's meant for and how you can enhance your intimacy in your relationship with communication and figuring out what the other person likes. And then understanding that, physical intimacy is not always penetration. Sometimes it can be touch, it can be massage. And as we age and mature, the way that we experience physical intimacy can change. And that's when, husbands change, wives change, partners change, everybody ages. So there's always been this big focus on male erectile dissatisfaction, but there's not been a lot of focus on female changes in the body. So thank God for all these wonderful women in medicine who actually care about that now. And so the focus has shifted to women and their sexuality. And the good news is there are so many things that we can do to improve sexuality. There's vaginal rejuvenation and vaginal restoration now. We even have an O shot where you take the platelet-rich plasma that can be re-injected near the G-spot around the clitoris to increase the blood flow to the area, to enhance stimulation and sensation. There are medical devices that you can have at home that use a little bit of energy to kind of help stimulate that G-spot, to improve the desire, to improve lubrication, to decrease the chance of incontinence. So we have made huge strides for women and improving their sexuality and intimacy forever. And then when you talked about trauma, a lot of women too, who may have been promiscuous, a lot of times that's because they can take control of their bodies. If somebody has made them do something, they feel like, I'm going to take control of my body. And I'm going to decide who and when and where. And now that I have that control, so that kind of plays into it. And that's why it's so important with that history of sexual trauma to go to therapy, to address it and not try to suppress it, because at some point it will come up and come out, and it can negatively affect your intimacy as well as just your quality of life and your mental status. So all of those things are in the works. We are now focused a little bit more on the prevention of aging intimacy so that people can maintain that enjoyment and that gift. So I'm just excited that women are in medicine now. It's a huge focus, and we have so many things that we can do to maintain intimacy for life and total wellness.
Yes. And now there's another question from Marianne. What resources are available for teens whose parents aren't forthcoming with sexual information? So, outside of the world of, Unitarian universal communities where there is this wonderful curriculum, do either one of you have some resources for teens whose parents aren't forthcoming with sexual information?
I mean, I think the book, The Gift of Sex, is good for anyone. And I think that there's a lot of literature out there. And I think that one thing we have to realize is that teens have more access to information than we ever will and ever did. So more than likely, the teens can teach us a lot of information because there's so much access for information for everybody. So that is why it is necessary to start having these conversations earlier so that they have a better understanding and they're getting the right information. So I know Dr. Molly probably has a few more references for younger girls and their bodies.
Well, we have one of the books we use is Our Whole Bodies, Our Whole Selves in the sexuality course. There's also a few websites. One is, Planned Parenthood actually has a lot of great stuff always. And then there is Bedsider, which is actually about birth control, but it also sort of talks about sexuality and sexual health and staying safe, using condoms and all, and how to approach that, is a very good website also that I use a lot.
So, all right. So, you know what I really want to do is I want to drop your information into the chat. So, Dr. Mia, you mentioned your website, right? So, let's see. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that people know how to reach you, how to reach both of you, because there's going to be questions afterwards. So, could you give us your website again?
It's mibellawellness.com.
Is it, spell that?
Capital MIBELLA wellness.
Capital M-I.
I don't know why I said capital.
L-L-A.
I have a sixth grader. Yeah, Mibella, MIBELLA wellness.com. And then Mia Cowan MD is a website, and then Mibella Health and Wellness on the Facebook.
All right. So here's the first one. And then Mia Cowan. Is that no space in between the Mia and the Cowan?
Yes, ma'am. MiaCowanMD.com.
.com. So we're going to create that one. And what was your Facebook?
Just Mibella Health and Wellness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That'll be on Facebook. So let's see through the magic of adding these in. Oh, there's the first one. We got that right?
Yeah. Just
so important. I really like, our audience to be able to get in touch with our guests. Go on over and visit websites, or if there's an email contact, you want to, go ahead and email and reach out. We have, national experts coming on this show. Whoops. And then let's say, here we go. I want to show this one. All right. It's still doing that one. There we go. There's the other one. There's the other one. And then, of course, it's Mibella Wellness. Health and Wellness is on Facebook. So you want to look up people on Facebook. You want to go to their websites, chock full of information. So, Molly, is there a place or email or anything that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I'm in the retired state, but people can email me at my middle initial is V for Virginia. Mm-hmm. So my email is a little cryptic. It's mollvwalk, MOLLVWALK @AOL.com.
Wonderful.
I was also just reading in the comments, Rebecca, so this course that I taught, it used to be called About Your Sexuality. And then we changed it. There was actually a thing on 60 Minutes about it ages ago. And then we changed it, and it's now called Our Whole Lives, or OWL is our acronym. And you can go to, you can Google Our Whole Lives, or you can go to the UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association.org, UUA.org, and put in OWL, OWL, to find out more about the curriculum. It is a curriculum. You're trained. You would have to buy it, and you're trained in it. It was developed by the Unitarian Universalists and the United Church of Christ, but many different faith communities use it. We do talk about LGBTQ folks and about identity and fluid. In the last several years that I've taught this, we've always had one of the kids in the group has been binary or fluid or transgender. So we talk about that quite a lot, and uplifting our thing. And it's Moll with 2 L's, MOLL.
Oh, it's M. I'm sorry. Let me go back and correct that. So I'll do another one. So it's MOLLL.
VWALK.
WALK at
AOL.
AOL.
I saw no reason to change.
All right. So here we go.
But I see Rebecca's of the era when it was called AYS, and I taught it when it was AYS.
All right. There we go with the 2 L's. And then last but not least, I am offering discovery calls this afternoon. So I'm going to ask my beloved to go ahead and drop that in the chat. If you want to talk to me this afternoon, today's the day to do it. I might have one little spot right after the show this morning, and then sometimes this afternoon. You can go another way of accessing it is going over to my website, www.drcarolpenn.com, DRCAROLPENN.com. These are complimentary, no charge to you.
Wow.
And
that's huge. Take advantage of that. That's huge.
Yes. And so there's, my information right there. My beloved will drop that in the chat for anyone who wants to do that. And I say, take advantage of it. This is the day you've got questions. You want to continue this conversation. You want to see what else I'm up to. So go on over, grab your spot, grab it right now. So I'm going to go back over here because we've got some more comments coming in, and I want to be sure that we're respectful of this incredible. You see how many people get up early in the morning and they're awake because they're asking these questions and making these comments. All right. Oh, an extra I in wellness. All right. So an extra. Yes, so if you see a typo or misspelling, we know that there's not an extra L there. Just take that right on out. So my beloved has dropped how to go on over to grab your discovery call. Let's see.
Mary, Patricia had asked about why do we gain weight? And I think Dr. Mia was talking about it's because we have a decrease in testosterone, and it drops even more. And that testosterone helps you to keep body muscle mass. And so instead of creating muscle, anything we eat, it goes straight to fat. And that's where we have our little fat belly.
Yes. And the other thing I'll share before we get on over here. So this show also magically becomes a podcast. So if you've missed previous episodes, you want to catch this again later. The new episodes are posted weekly, and this is an important one to share with the wider community. You can also see in the chat, you can go over to anchor.fm, like and subscribe. I'm now on all the podcast channels, so whichever one you like to listen to, whatever you prefer, and you will be able to share this information easily with your community. This is extremely important, near and dear to my heart. So my beautiful, beautiful super friends, any last words of encouragement or comments that you'd like to share with our wonderful audience?
So I said, make sure you have a provider that you're comfortable with, you can have these discussions with, that take the time to answer your questions, because even though we change as we mature through the different stages of life, there's so many different things that we can do to maintain healthy sexual function throughout the different stages of life. And it's so important for your total wellness. So you want to be able to maintain that, whether with a partner or without a partner.
Yes.
Right. And that's really key, is to be able to have a provider help you. But also just know that if you're feeling stuff, it's probably normal. And just, be good to yourself that your body knows what she's doing. This is the most amazing machine that's ever been made, and everything works together. The whole system is, I don't think we could make it up ourselves. It's just so incredible, all the little things that happen in order for a pregnancy to happen, for the baby to come out, for all that. So the whole machine is working probably pretty much the way it's supposed to. And each of us have our different strengths and weaknesses in it. So.
All right. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Please be sure to join me during the week at 6:45 a.m. where we do guided meditation Monday, Friday. This week, little vacation coming up. So Monday through Thursday, 6:45 a.m. That's over on my Facebook page at Dr. Carol Penn. Movement is my medicine. I've got this, these are the early birds who are catching the worm, ladies. This is my group, #Meditation Nation. I am going to sign off, but next week, stay tuned. We'll be right back here for another episode of Weightless in Mind, Body, and Spirit. Stay tuned for some special guests over the next 2 weeks. I'm calling this the anniversary episodes because it's my MDM. It's our wedding anniversary next Sunday. So stay tuned, special guests. And for those of you that are looking for a partner in life, that are desiring relationship and marriage, please come on back to help us celebrate our wedding anniversary.
30 years.
Second. Thank you. Hey, good morning, Dr. Dietrich. Good morning, Dr. Erica. Linda, thank you so much for your support and your comments. And we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.